I stood in my sister's dining room, phone hidden in my purse, watching my uncle rise from his chair with trembling hands. My husband Tom had just whispered those strange words to me moments before. "Put your phone on record. Something's coming." I thought he was being paranoid like always, but I did it anyway, because Tom's instincts were rarely wrong. Uncle Jerry stood there, 82 years old but looking ancient in that moment, his glass of wine shaking so badly that drops spilled onto Cassie's expensive white tablecloth. Everyone went quiet. My grandmother, sitting across from him, suddenly went rigid. Her eyes locked onto Uncle Jerry with an intensity I'd never seen before. The sweet, fragile woman we'd all been babying for 3 weeks since Grandpa died looked almost dangerous. "I need to tell you all something," Uncle Jerry said, his voice cracking. "About how my brother really died. About what I did to him." The room froze. But before anyone could react, Grandma shot up from her seat with surprising speed for an 86-year-old widow who claimed she could barely walk without assistance. She grabbed Uncle Jerry's arm hard. "Gerald, sit down," she hissed. "Don't do this to your brother's memory." Then Cassie was up too, rushing over from the head of the table, her face completely white. My perfect controlling older sister looked terrified. She put her hand on Uncle Jerry's shoulder. "Uncle Jerry, you're upset," she said loudly, forcing a smile for the guests. "You've had too much wine. Let's get you some water." But Uncle Jerry shook them both off, and I saw tears streaming down his weathered face. "I can't keep living with this," he sobbed. "He was my brother and I killed him." The dining room exploded with shocked voices, but I couldn't move. I just stared, as my grandmother and sister desperately tried to silence him, both women grabbing at him, and I suddenly understood what Tom had known all along. They didn't want him to confess. They were trying to stop him. Let me go back 3 weeks. That's when this nightmare really started, though I didn't know it then. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Mom called me at the school where I teach 3rd grade. I was in the middle of a math lesson when my phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. When I finally checked during recess, I had 7 missed calls from my mother and 4 from Cassie. Grandpa was dead. Heart attack. Sudden. He'd been working in his garden that morning, came inside for lunch, and collapsed in the kitchen. Grandma found him. The paramedics tried for 30 minutes but couldn't bring him back. I left school immediately. Tom met me at the hospital even though there was nothing to be done. Grandpa was already gone. His body moved to the morgue. The family gathered in the waiting room. Mum was hysterical. My father stood there looking lost. Cassie had somehow already taken charge, making phone calls, arranging things, her voice crisp and efficient, even though tears ran down her face. And there was Grandma. She sat in a wheelchair that a nurse had brought, looking so small and broken. Uncle Jerry sat beside her, holding her hand. He looked devastated, which made sense. Grandpa wasn't just his older brother. They'd built the construction company together, lived on the same property for 30 years. Saw each other every single day. "I can't believe he's gone," Uncle Jerry kept saying. "My big brother, gone." I remember thinking it was sweet how he comforted Grandma. A brother-in-law being there for his sister-in-law in her darkest moment. I remember Tom standing slightly apart from everyone, just watching. He did that sometimes, observed instead of participated. It annoyed me back then. The funeral was 4 days later. Cassie planned every detail. She picked the flowers, chose the photos for the slideshow, wrote the program. She even selected which family members would speak. Uncle Jerry gave the eulogy. He talked about growing up with Grandpa, about building the business together, about fishing trips and inside jokes that made everyone laugh through their tears. "William was more than my brother," Uncle Jerry said from the pulpit. "He was my best friend, the best man I ever knew." His voice broke on those last words. Grandma sobbed in the front pew. Cassie put her arm around her. Everything seemed normal. Sad, but normal. After the funeral, things got strange, but I didn't notice at first. Grandma didn't move back into the main house. She said it had too many memories. that she couldn't bear to sleep in the bed she'd shared with Grandpa for 64 years. So she stayed in the guest house with Uncle Jerry. Just until she's ready, Cassie explained. Uncle Jerry can look after her there. The guest house sat about 100 feet from the main house on Grandpa's property. Uncle Jerry had lived there for 3 decades, ever since his wife died. It was a cute little cottage with 2 bedrooms. Made sense that Grandma would stay there temporarily, or so I thought. But she never left. Weeks went by and Grandma remained in that guest house with Uncle Jerry. Cassie visited them every day. She'd show up with groceries, with casseroles, with anything they needed. She wouldn't let anyone else help. "They need space," she'd say. "I'll handle it." Tom started asking questions. He'd come with me to drop off flowers or cards, and he'd watch the guest house with this look on his face I couldn't read. "Don't you think it's odd?" he asked one night in our kitchen. "Your grandmother living with your uncle?" "He's her brother-in-law," I said. "He's taking care of her." "How long did Jerry live in that guest house?" "Since his wife died. 30 years, I think." "Why?" Tom just shook his head. "How long have they known each other?" "I don't know. Since Grandpa and Grandma got married, I guess. 64 years. He went quiet after that, but I could see his mind working. Tom did this sometimes. Got suspicious of people for no reason. Came with being a defense attorney. You saw the worst in people all day, you started seeing it everywhere. But then I noticed things too. Small things. Like how when I'd visit, Grandma and Uncle Jerry would be sitting very close on the couch. How they'd stop talking when I walked in. How Cassie always seemed to be there, intercepting visits, controlling access. One afternoon, I showed up unannounced with soup. Cassie's car wasn't there. I knocked on the guest house door and heard scrambling inside. When Grandma finally answered, her hair was messy and Uncle Jerry was coming out of the bedroom adjusting his shirt. "We were just napping," Grandma said quickly. But her face was flushed and she wouldn't meet my eyes. I left the soup and got out of there, feeling uncomfortable but not understanding why. When I told Tom about it later, he got very quiet. "Olivia," he said carefully, "I need to tell you something. I've been looking into some things." "What things?" "What things? Just trust me. At the memorial dinner tomorrow, I need you to do exactly what I say." That was last night. And now here I was, standing in Cassie's dining room, watching everything fall apart. The memorial dinner had seemed like a good idea when Cassie proposed it 2 weeks ago. A chance for the extended family to gather, share stories about Grandpa, celebrate his life properly now that the initial shock had faded. Cassie insisted on hosting at her house. She'd spent days preparing, hiring caterers, setting up the dining room with Grandpa's photos everywhere, creating a whole tribute wall with pictures spanning his 89 years. Tom and I arrived at 6. Cassie's house was already full of relatives. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone dressed nicely, speaking in those hushed, respectful tones people use at memorial events. The dining room table stretched nearly the length of the room, set with Cassie's best china and crystal. Grandma and Uncle Jerry arrived together, which should have seemed normal, but somehow didn't. They walked in side by side, her hand on his arm. She was playing the grieving widow, perfectly black dress, minimal makeup, moving slowly, like each step hurt. But I noticed her grip on Uncle Jerry's arm was tight, almost possessive. Tom noticed too. He'd been watching them from the moment they walked through the door. He positioned us near the dining room entrance where we could see everything. His jaw was clenched, which meant he was stressed. "What's going on?" I whispered. "Just wait," he said. "And remember what I told you. When I give you the signal, start recording." Dinner started normally enough. Cassie had arranged the seating carefully. Grandma at one end of the table, Uncle Jerry in the middle, herself at the head. Tom and I sat where we could see all 3 of them clearly. As appetizers were served, people began sharing memories of Grandpa. My cousin Robert talked about how Grandpa taught him to fish. Aunt Linda told a funny story about Grandpa accidentally dyeing all his white shirts pink in the wash. People laughed. It felt good. healing even. This was what a memorial should be. But I kept noticing strange things. Uncle Jerry barely touched his food. He poured himself glass after glass of wine, drinking fast, his hands shaking. Every few minutes his eyes would fill with tears and he'd wipe them away quickly. He looked tormented. Grandma kept trying to catch his eye from her end of the table. She'd lean forward trying to get his attention, but he wouldn't look at her. At one point, she picked up her phone and typed something. Seconds later, Uncle Jerry's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, read the message, and his face went pale. He shook his head slightly, a tiny gesture, but Grandma saw it. Her expression darkened. Cassie noticed the exchange too. She stood up suddenly, announcing it was time to clear the appetizer plates and bring out the main course. She moved around the table toward Uncle Jerry, placing her hand on his shoulder as she passed, squeezing hard. He flinched. Something was very wrong. I could feel it now, the tension thick in the air like electricity before a storm. Tom felt it too. He reached under the table and squeezed my hand twice. The signal. I pulled my phone from my purse as discreetly as I could, opened the voice recorder app, hit record, and slipped it back into my purse with the top open so the microphone could pick up sound. My heart was pounding. What was about to happen? The main course came out: roasted chicken, vegetables, fancy potatoes. Cassie had spared no expense. More stories were shared. Uncle Jerry's cousin Margaret talked about how Grandpa and Uncle Jerry built their first construction project together. A small office building downtown that still stood today. Those Fletcher brothers, Margaret said warmly. Inseparable since they were boys. William always looked out for his little brother Gerald. Uncle Jerry made a choking sound. He grabbed his wineglass and drained it. Grandma was staring at him now, with undisguised panic in her eyes. The frail, grieving widow act had slipped. She looked alert, predatory almost. More toasts were proposed. Someone clinked a glass. To William Fletcher. Voices chorused around the table. To Grandpa. Uncle Jerry didn't raise his glass. He just sat there, staring at his plate, tears streaming down his face now. His lips were moving like he was having a conversation with himself. Then he pushed his chair back. The scraping sound cut through the dinner chatter. Everyone went quiet, turning to look at him. He stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the table for support. His wineglass trembled in his other hand. Grandma went rigid in her seat. Her fingers gripped her napkin so hard her knuckles turned white. Cassie's eyes went wide. She opened her mouth to say something, but Uncle Jerry spoke first. I'd like to say something, he announced. His voice was thick with emotion and wine. About my brother. About William. That's lovely, Cassie said quickly, her voice too bright. But maybe after dessert. The caterers are... No. Uncle Jerry cut her off. Now. I need to say this now. Tom leaned close to me and whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear him. Put your phone on record. Something's coming. I wanted to tell him it already was recording, but the look on his face stopped me. He knew something. Something terrible. Uncle Jerry raised his glass higher. William Fletcher was the best man I ever knew, he began. His voice cracked. He was honest, loyal. He trusted people. He trusted the people closest to him. Grandma stood up abruptly. Gerald, sit down. You're upset. He trusted me, Uncle Jerry continued, ignoring her. His little brother. And he trusted his wife. He looked directly at Grandma now. He trusted us both. And we... Gerald! Grandma's voice was sharp. Nothing frail about it now. She moved toward him with surprising speed. Sit down right now. Cassie jumped up too, rushing over. Uncle Jerry, you've had too much wine. Let's get you some water. But Uncle Jerry shook them both off. Get away from me, Uncle Jerry said, his voice suddenly stronger. Both of you, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. The room was completely silent now. 20 pairs of eyes watched as my grandmother and sister tried to physically restrain an 82-year-old man from speaking. It looked insane. It was insane. I need to tell them, Uncle Jerry said, looking around at all of us. I need to tell you all what really happened. What we did. You don't know what you're saying, Grandma hissed. The sweet, fragile act was completely gone. She looked furious and desperate. You're confused. The grief has made you. I'm not confused, Uncle Jerry shouted. Several people gasped. I'd never heard him raise his voice in my entire life. I know exactly what I did. I killed my brother. I murdered William. The dining room erupted. People started talking over each other, some standing up, others frozen in shock. My mother let out a small scream. Cassie was saying something about calling a doctor, that Uncle Jerry was having some kind of breakdown. But Tom stood up calmly and said in his courtroom voice, "Let him talk." Everyone went quiet again. Tom had that effect on people. Something about his presence commanded attention. Uncle Jerry looked at Tom with what seemed like gratitude. Then he looked back at the rest of us, and the whole terrible truth came pouring out. I stole from the company, he said. From the construction business that William and I built together. I stole over $2 million over 15 years. I thought he'd never notice. The company was doing so well, bringing in so much money. I told myself it didn't matter, that I deserved it, that I'd built that business too. My mother gasped. Jerry, no, that's not... But he found out, Uncle Jerry continued. 6 months ago, William discovered everything. He had the books audited and found every penny I'd taken. He confronted me in his office. I've never seen him so angry, so disappointed. His voice broke on that word. He said I'd betrayed him, his own brother, the person he trusted most in the world. Uncle Jerry paused to wipe his eyes. Grandma tried to interrupt, but Tom moved to stand between her and Uncle Jerry, blocking her path. Cassie stood frozen, her face ashen. William said he was going to report me to the police, Uncle Jerry said. That he was going to cut me out of the will completely. That I'd have to leave the property, leave the guest house I'd lived in for 30 years. He said I'd destroyed our brotherhood, destroyed everything we'd built together. And he was right. I deserved all of it. The stress from discovering the theft caused William's first heart attack, Uncle Jerry continued. That night, after our confrontation, he collapsed right there in his office. I called the ambulance. I rode with him to the hospital. I held his hand and told him I was sorry, that I'd pay back every penny, that I'd do anything to make it right. He took a shaky breath. William survived that heart attack. He recovered. And when he was strong enough to talk, he told me nothing had changed. He was still going to report me, still cutting me from the will, still kicking me out. But there was something else too. Uncle Jerry looked directly at Grandma. He was going to divorce Dorothy. And he was going to tell the whole family why. Grandma's face went white. Don't you dare, she whispered. He found out about us, Uncle Jerry said quietly. About the affair. The room exploded again. This time the shock was even greater. People were standing, shouting questions, some demanding to know what he meant. My mother looked like she might faint. Dorothy and I have been having an affair for 25 years, Uncle Jerry said. The words fell like bombs. It started a year after I moved into the guest house, after my wife died. Dorothy and I, we were both lonely. William was always working, always at the construction site or meeting with clients. Dorothy felt neglected. I felt alone. We started spending time together. It started innocently. Talking. Having coffee. Then it became more. I couldn't breathe. I looked at my grandmother. This woman I'd known my entire life, who'd baked cookies and told bedtime stories and taught me how to knit. She stood there with her jaw clenched, glaring at Uncle Jerry with pure hatred. For 25 years we betrayed him, Uncle Jerry said. My own brother. We'd meet when he was away on business trips, late at night when he was asleep in the main house. We were careful. We thought we were so careful. But 6 months ago, William came home early from a trip. He walked into the guest house and found us together. Stop talking, Grandma said through gritted teeth. Gerald, I'm warning you. The betrayal nearly killed him, Uncle Jerry said. His own wife, his own brother. He had the heart attack that same night. And when he recovered, he told me he was going to expose us. He was going to tell everyone what we'd done. He said our betrayal deserved to be known by the whole family, that we didn't deserve to hide it. Uncle Jerry's hands were shaking so badly now, he could barely hold his wineglass. He set it down on the table. Dorothy panicked. She came to me 2 days before William was supposed to be released from the hospital. She said we couldn't let him destroy us, that we'd lose everything, our home, our family, each other. She said William was old anyway, that he'd lived a full life, that we deserved to be happy together after all these years of hiding. Shut up! Grandma screamed. She lunged for Uncle Jerry, but Tom caught her arm. She struggled against him, nothing frail or weak about her movements now. You stupid old fool! Shut your mouth! But Uncle Jerry kept going, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for too long. She researched William's medications. She found out exactly what would interact badly with his heart condition. She wrote it all down for me, told me exactly what to bring to the hospital, exactly how to give it to him without the nurses noticing. My hands flew to my mouth. No, this couldn't be real. I visited William 2 days before he died, Uncle Jerry said, tears streaming down his face. He was getting better, stronger. The doctors said he'd be released in a few days. He was sitting up in bed, reading the newspaper. He looked at me when I walked in, and I could see it in his eyes, the disappointment, the betrayal, but also something else. Sadness, like he'd lost something he could never get back. Uncle Jerry's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He still called me his little brother, even after everything. He said, "Hey there, little brother. Come to say goodbye?" Because he knew I'd be gone when he got out. Gone from the property. Gone from his life. And he was right. I brought him supplements, Uncle Jerry continued. That's what I told him. Special vitamins that would help him recover faster. He trusted me. Even after the theft, even after the affair, some part of him still trusted his little brother. He took them without question, swallowed them down with water, and thanked me. The dining room was dead silent except for someone crying quietly. I think it was my mother. I sat with him for an hour, Uncle Jerry said. We talked about when we were kids, about building the company, about good times before I ruined everything. When I left, he said, "I'll always love you, Jerry. You're my brother. Nothing changes that." Those were the last words he ever said to me. Uncle Jerry's legs seemed to give out. He collapsed back into his chair, sobbing. That night, he had another heart attack. A massive one. The medications I gave him, they interacted with his heart condition exactly like Dorothy said they would. The nurses called me at 2 a.m. He was already gone by the time I got to the hospital. My brother. I killed my own brother. Grandma was still struggling against Tom's grip, but she'd stopped screaming. Now she was just staring at Uncle Jerry with venom in her eyes. "You weak, pathetic man," she spat. "After everything we planned, after everything I did for you, for us," Uncle Jerry corrected, looking at her. "You did it for us, you said, so we could finally be together, so we could stop hiding. And we would have been fine," Grandma shrieked. "We would have gotten away with it if you'd just kept your mouth shut. But no. You had to develop a conscience. You had to feel guilty about killing a man who was going to destroy both our lives." The mask was completely off now. This wasn't my grandmother. This was a stranger wearing her face. A cold, calculating stranger who just admitted to planning her own husband's murder. "There's more," Uncle Jerry said, looking away from her. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Dorothy wasn't the only one who knew. He looked directly at Cassie, who'd been standing frozen near the head of the table. "Tell them, Cassandra. Tell them your part in this." Cassie's face drained of all color. "I don't know what you're talking about. 1 year ago, Uncle Jerry said, you came to the guest house late one night. You said you needed to talk to Dorothy about planning your mother's birthday party. But you didn't call first. You just showed up. And you saw us together. You saw Dorothy and me kissing in the living room. No, Cassie whispered. No, I never. You stood in the doorway and watched us, Uncle Jerry continued. Then you said, well, isn't this interesting? Do you remember that, Cassandra? Those exact words. Cassie looked around the room desperately, at all of us staring at her. He's lying. He's confused. You blackmailed us, Uncle Jerry said. You said you'd tell Grandpa everything unless we paid you. $5,000 a month. For your silence. We paid you for a year. $60,000 total. That's not true, Cassie shouted. But her voice cracked. Uncle Jerry tapped his phone screen. I have the bank transfers. Every payment. All marked as family support, but we both know what they really were. He swiped to something else on his phone. And when Dorothy and I were planning William's murder, you found out about that too. Dorothy was careless. She left her notes out one day when you came by. Notes about medications, about timing, about how to make it look natural. You read them. Cassie was shaking her head frantically. I didn't. I wouldn't. I would never. And instead of stopping us, Uncle Jerry said, his voice hardening, instead of warning your grandfather, instead of calling the police, you demanded a cut of the inheritance. You said if we succeeded, you wanted a third of everything William left behind, and you'd help us make sure no one suspected anything. He held up his phone toward the room. I recorded our conversation. I've been recording everything for 3 months because I knew this would come out eventually. I knew I couldn't live with what I'd done. Play it, Tom said firmly. Let everyone hear. Uncle Jerry's fingers fumbled with his phone. Then Cassie's voice filled the dining room crystal clear. So when he dies, the estate gets split between Dorothy and you, right? And I want a third of your combined share. That's my price for keeping quiet about this whole thing. Another voice responded, Grandma's voice, cold and businesslike. That's agreeable. Once the will is settled and the estate is divided, we'll transfer your portion. And I'll help make sure nothing looks suspicious. Cassie's recorded voice continued. I'll plan the memorial. Keep people away from you two so you can keep your stories straight. Make sure everyone sees the grieving widow and devastated brother act. I'm good at managing appearances. You always have been, Grandma's recorded voice said with what sounded like approval. The recording ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. Cassie lunged toward Uncle Jerry, screaming, You recorded us! You set me up! I set myself up, Uncle Jerry said tiredly. I set all of us up, because we deserve to be punished for what we did. That's when Tom finally spoke. The police are already on their way. I called them before dinner started. Everyone turned to stare at him. Tom pulled out his own phone. I've been investigating all 3 of you for 6 weeks, working with Helen Rodriguez. Helen, the family friend who'd been sitting quietly at the far end of the table, stood up. I noticed Dorothy and Gerald acting strangely, like a couple instead of in-laws. I found old letters in the guest house when I was helping clean, Helen continued. Love letters between Dorothy and Gerald dating back 25 years. I didn't know what to do with them, so I contacted Tom. I knew he was an attorney and I trusted him. Tom nodded. Helen brought me evidence of the affair 6 weeks ago. I started digging into the financial records of the estate, into Grandpa's medical files, into everything. I found the bank transfers to Cassie. I found irregularities in the company books showing Uncle Jerry's theft. I found the medication logs from the hospital that didn't match what should have been administered. He looked at Uncle Jerry. 3 days ago, I confronted him privately. Showed him everything I'd found. Told him I had enough evidence to bury all 3 of them in court. I gave him a choice: confess publicly at this memorial dinner, or I'd hand everything over to the police and they'd all face trial with no possibility of mercy. Uncle Jerry nodded slowly. I chose to confess. I couldn't carry the guilt anymore. Every night I see William's face. Every morning I wake up knowing I murdered my own brother for a woman and money. Tom said if I confessed, showed real remorse, maybe the judge would show some leniency. But honestly, I don't want leniency. I deserve whatever punishment comes. Sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through Cassie's front windows. The police had arrived. Cassie started backing toward the kitchen. No, this isn't happening. I didn't kill anyone. I just kept quiet. That's not the same thing. It's conspiracy to commit murder, Tom said calmly. And blackmail. An accessory after the fact. 2 police officers entered through the front door, followed by a detective in a dark suit. Tom walked over to them, showing his attorney credentials, explaining the situation quickly and professionally. He handed over his phone with all his evidence. The detective listened, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. Grandma suddenly tried to bolt. She moved fast for someone who'd been playing frail for weeks, heading for the back door. But Helen was closer and blocked her path. Grandma actually shoved her, pushing the 60-year-old woman hard enough that she stumbled. One of the officers rushed over and grabbed Grandma's arm. "Get your hands off me!" Grandma shrieked. "I'm an 86-year-old widow. You can't treat me like this." "You're under arrest for the murder of William Fletcher," the detective said calmly, pulling out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. He was a boring, controlling man." Grandma screamed as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. 64 years I spent with him. 64 years of pretending to be the perfect wife while he ignored me. While he cared more about his business than about me. Gerald was the only one who ever really loved me. The only one who made me feel alive. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, the detective continued, unfazed by her outburst. Another officer moved toward Uncle Jerry, who held out his wrists without resistance. "I'm ready," he said quietly. "I've been ready since the day William died." As they handcuffed him, he looked around the room at all of us. "I'm sorry. I know that means nothing now. But I'm sorry. William deserved so much better than what we did to him. He was a good man, the best man. And I betrayed him in every possible way." Cassie was crying hysterically now, begging, pleading. "Please, I have children, I have a family, I didn't actually kill anyone, please." "You knew about a planned murder and did nothing," the detective said as a female officer handcuffed her. "You blackmailed the conspirators and demanded payment. You actively helped cover up the crime. That makes you part of it." "Olivia," Cassie screamed, looking at me with desperate eyes. Tell them I wouldn't do this. We're sisters. You know me." I stared at my sister, the woman who'd read our grandfather's murder plans, and instead of saving him, she'd asked for money. Who'd helped the killers cover their tracks? Who'd planned this entire memorial dinner, probably, to keep up appearances, to make sure everyone thought we were a normal grieving family? "I don't know you at all," I said quietly. The officers led all 3 of them out. Grandma was still screaming, her voice shrill and unhinged. "Gerald gave him the pills. I just told him what to use. He's the real murderer. Arrest him, not me." "We're arresting all of you," the detective said tiredly. Uncle Jerry went quietly, his head bowed. As he passed me, he stopped. "Your grandfather kept a journal. It's in his desk in the main house, hidden in a false bottom in the bottom left drawer. He wrote about everything, discovering the affair, the theft, his plans to expose us. He deserves for someone to read his words, to know how he really felt." Then they were gone, loaded into separate police cars and driven away. The remaining family members sat in stunned silence in Cassie's destroyed dining room. The elaborate memorial dinner sat uneaten on the table. Grandpa's smiling face looked out at us from dozens of photos on the tribute wall Cassie had created. My mother was sobbing in my father's arms. Other relatives were talking in shocked whispers, some already calling family members who hadn't been here to tell them the news. Helen sat down heavily in a chair, looking exhausted. Tom came over to me. "Are you okay?" I wasn't. I was so far from okay, I couldn't even see okay from where I stood. My grandmother murdered my grandfather. My uncle murdered his own brother. My sister helped them do it and asked for money. I know, Tom said gently, putting his arm around me. I'm so sorry. You knew, I said, looking up at him. For 6 weeks you knew and you didn't tell me. I couldn't. Not until I had solid proof. And I needed them to confess. Without Uncle Jerry's confession and the recordings, proving murder would have been nearly impossible. The medical examiner ruled it a natural death. We needed them to admit what they did. I leaned against him, feeling numb. Why did you tell me to record it? You already had evidence. Back up, he said. And because I wanted you to hear it directly from them. I didn't want you to always wonder if maybe I'd gotten it wrong. If maybe there was some other explanation. I knew this would destroy you, but I needed you to hear the truth from their own mouths.